So a very good morning, good afternoon everyone, a very warm welcome from IACC to today's IACC Shorts, looking at refreshment breaks. For those joining us for the first time, we just run through a few housekeeping points. We do have a large number on the call today, so we have placed you all on mute and would ask if you could keep your cameras off during this session, that would be great. The session is going to be recorded, so I will forward it to you all afterwards. And it's also available on the IACC on demand page on our website, but also the IACC YouTube channel. For questions, please use your chat boxes at the bottom of your screens. I'd encourage you to post any questions for the panel, and we will be keeping an eye on that during the session. So let me hand over now to our facilitator today, IACC CEO, Mark Cooper. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everyone, and welcome to IACC's last webinar of 2020. I'm kind of a little bit sad about this, but also looking forward to the schedule that we've got for 2021. But fantastic to be with so many of the IACC family from around the globe as we lead into the festive holidays. And thank you for joining us for yet another one of IACC's famous short sessions, which is, as Kate mentioned, the reimagining of refreshment breaks. Today, our session is going to be one of a two-part series. Today, we're going to be focusing on the refreshment break approach, the stations, the food concepts, the wrapping, the presentation. And in January, we're going to come back and we will be looking into the future for our conference lunch options. Now, today, I'm honoured and thrilled to be supported by IACC's member experts. A number of those you'll see with cameras on. Give everyone a wave, panel. There we are, ready and poised to debate and discuss and help us decide what's going to be the future for our industry as it relates to refreshment breaks. Now, I really challenged this group when it came together as a global task force charged with looking into what the future is going to be for these two really important areas. I challenged the group to think beyond the immediate. Of course, we are still in the process of reopening our venues around the world, so the immediate hasn't gone away. But also, hopefully, what you'll see is some discussion as it relates to what some of those longer term trends may be, or longer term behavioral changes from our attendees may be as we step through this session. So we're going to carve the next 60 minutes up into a number of sections. First of all, I'd like to start by saying what's going to be really important and embedded through all of our thinking today, both from all of you attending through the chat box, from the discussions that our experts will be having, is how do we do what we need to do while still fostering the connection with attendees that's so important and something that is has become synonymous with the conference venue concept. How do we keep creating experiences, because connections and experiences are still going to be fundamentally important as we redesign or reimagine this area. We're going to head then into one of the deepest areas as it relates to how we present and how we wrap and what they look like visually, because it affects so many elements of the new service style. So we'll be looking at those sections. We'll then head into service locations, service approaches. We're going to be thinking about how they need to change, what's influencing those changes, whether it's footfall, whether it's control, whether it's variety. And then we'll head into sharing information, and that's the information between our attendees and our venue teams. And of course, does technology play a role in that? And again, just challenging ourselves, is there ways that we interact in other food service environments outside of the meetings industry where technology has made a difference there? So there'll be at least one or two references to sporting events when they get back together and how technology helps us facilitate the smooth flow of service and those halftime refreshment breaks. And then we're going to touch upon the short and long-term sanitation measures. We're not going to be going into detail as it relates to COVID sanitation, but just what may what may drag on after the immediate needs go away, what might become a good sign for our attendees to see as it relates to the process and the sanitation that we put in place. And then last but not least, we're going to look at drinks service. So we have a lot to cover. So fasten your seatbelts, everybody. But first of all, where the data that we're going to be talking about today, some of those opinions when I refer to the global task force have come from the IACC members. Many of you, you'll recognize that really are at the thick of both operating facilities around the world. Some of them have been throughout the summer, or really working hard to re-prepare for that reopening of meetings when that comes in 2021. So thank you all. None of this is possible unless we bring together the collective wisdom. Now, apparently our expert panel as well haven't got all the answers. They told me that, and they're really interested in what you think as well. So please do cram that chat box full of suppliers that you're enjoying working with, because they're coming up with really cool solutions, your own ideas, your own creativity, because all of this that we are going to be sharing today and the work that's gone before it are going to be used to create 2 white papers that will evolve and that we will be able to share beyond these webinars. So first of all, we asked all of you ahead of this session today what was important for you. And the surveys were completed by you, our attendees, and in advance of that by our panel as well. And one of the first questions we asked was, what aspects of the continuous break station approach do you feel is the most under threat? Now, all of you, both parties, are concerned about the viability for the shared communal stations. That's obvious, probably unsurprising, but and as well because we cherish the shared communal stations. So we're absolutely aligned, our experts and our wider membership in terms of that. But where we differ a little bit is in the on-demand continuous access to snacks and drinks that our wider membership have a concern for. And what I'd like to do is just maybe ask our experts here, why the continuous service is not a concern for you, or indeed why, as well as our task force have said, why offering variety and choice in the future is, but maybe not so much for our attendees. But first of all, to our panel of experts, why is the on-demand continuous access to snacks and drinks not a concern for you? Why do you think that can be a part of what we need to design for the future?
Mark, looking at from our angle, I'm looking at the continuous service approach as being something that would be a very high multiple touch point area. So if there's a continually people going to the station, continually a staff member going to the station, refilling stuff, bringing that all together, there's a lot of those different touch points that require sanitation between those different touches. So we're looking at more the angle of saying, here is a great variety of items that's going to be delivered to you. We'll replenish it as needed or as requested versus continuous.
That's Murray, I believe, from Canada as well there, Murray, is that
Yep.
right? Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir. Well, we're definitely going to be digging deeper into the areas of variety, the volume of attendees that we can serve in the future and how we can ensure that we can seamlessly serve that, a larger footfall when that returns to our properties. So that's going to be a big part of what we're looking at as we move on. But interesting to see, we've got both alignment here and also some views on where we might be differing or may have more struggles as we start to redesign these areas. I'm going to head into our first section here, which, as I said, is a pretty meaty one. It's all about the presentation of food and wrapping in there. Now, you can see a number of examples here that have been shared by different providers. We've got Sigtunahoiden that shared their outdoor refreshment break concept. We've got Viterra, who a number of our US colleagues know very well in terms of their compostable items, and then we've got individual and single serve items as well. I've thrown into the mix a slight curveball, the more colourful but still compostable tiffin box here, which is a multi-compartment, completely biodegradable option that we have there as well. But let me head into our first question, which is around food wrapping and presentation. Individually wrapped or boxed foods, are they here to stay? Or is this just that short-term, very necessary step until the pandemic passes within our properties? Who's got a view on whether this is short or long-term for us?
Sean, Mark, this is Sean. I've got an idea for you, and it actually it goes back to that last question you were asking about the concern over the continuous breaks and things like that. I don't know that it's a concern is the right way, because there's an awful lot of thought that's already going into this. So I think that's maybe why it didn't raise such a point with some of the panelists. It is what we've been working on the last 10 months. So when you look at pictures like this and you balance it against your question about whether it's long term, I think for me it's two pieces. So is it long term? Personally, I don't think so. I will tell you that we have our organization. We manage small and large venues and indoor and outdoor, and unquestionably the feedback we've gotten over the last 10 months is any food that you're putting out in that's not guest or staff served has got to be covered. It's got to be individually packaged. So that's the feedback that we're getting. But if it's here to stay long term, I don't know if we know that until we get a little farther down the road. So personally, I don't think so. But one of the things we've discovered right over the last 10 months is we continue to learn more and more together, the operators with the local health department and some other medical officials. And I think that may be what shapes whether this is long term, because those professionals are trying to get us through the challenge of today. And they're also looking to the next COVID and the next COVID beyond that. And if they come back and say to us, the best way to serve food in a public setting is going to be whatever that is, if it's covered, if it's individually packaged, if it's fewer people touching the food, then we'll go down that road. I haven't heard any feedback to that, to that direction right now. So that's why I said I don't think it'll stay, but it's definitely something we need to take care of now. So much so that I would say that it could be an over-under as to whether or not you're even allowed to open. I mean, you're working with your local health officials. They're going to define how you serve that food. If they're telling you we feel most comfortable if that's packaged individually, if it's covered, whatever way it is, then that's what you have to do. But I also wanted to touch on another piece. You asked about this packaging and long term. I just want to look at that food, by the way. The thing I want to offer up when we talk about this, what you did not say in asking about this is you did not say the word prepackaged food. You're just talking about individually wrapped. And so I do want to say that what I have found, and you can see it in that display there, that food. I mean, what we all have right now is an absolute free license to get as creative and as innovative around the quality and the meal that you put in that individual package that you possibly can. It is not a need to go backwards to prepackaged food or something you'd grab off a grocery store shelf and put in a toaster. That's not it at all. It is the best food you can possibly be prepared and as safe and as healthy and responsible as you can do it.
Sean, if I can, just one question, and then I'll come to you, Jim. In that foresight in terms of whether this is here for the long term or not, if I asked a question of however, if it's government imposed or otherwise, these restrictions and the use and this approach is in place for, let's be, less optimistic, the whole of 2021,
Sure.
We have the option to come back in 2022. Do you think there is a chance that actually our own appetite for returning back to that and our own preference to return back to that could be watered down a little, or do you think we'll just be really keen to get back to the open styles? The longer this goes on, doesn't matter.
I totally believe that we will all emerge from this different than we were before we started. I
Right.
totally believe that.
Yeah.
And so I think you will find people who are just simply more comfortable with this, even if it's not more required, even if it's not required, they're just more comfortable. So I do think it's a trend that will stay to some degree, whether it's required across the board or not. I don't want to predict, right? We'll take a look at that in another 6 months and see what the prevailing attitude is.
Well, I'm going to ask our audience to hold that thought, because then you link that long-term need potentially with the long-term need to evolve and be even more creative in our solutions. Jim, you had a point to make.
I was just going to say, we're talking about, are these here to stay? From my perspective, gosh, I kind of hope so. I think from a culinary standpoint, building a kit, call it a bento box, call it a tiffin box, building something that has absolutely what I intend on sharing with guests versus, leaving items out for people to kind of pick at. This gives me more creativity and more guidelines to build something that I want to do very intentionally. I think the presentation side of it looks great. And it has a lot of appeal. When I go somewhere and there's a little kit of some sort, it's kind of a surprise to see what you're going to get inside. And exactly what Sean said, you can take that level of food, and just elevate it without having to kind of water it down or just use prepackaged food. So again, from my perspective, I like the idea of building something, that is completely by my intent, and it's grounded in a culinary practice. We just hosted the Biden presidential campaign headquarters here, and we did boxes like those throughout the event, from mini charcuterie boxes to vegetable boxes, and they look great. And they were, very intentional in design, lots of focus on the food versus kind of just the convenience side of it.
And that's interesting as well. When you look at what you've just said, Jim, and the examples here, and full credit all the way through this to those that have provided the images. We can see ETC venues, brand nicely situated there, both in London and in New York. The colour, the presentation, the vibrancy of it, but then also potentially the that health and well-being perspective, the healthy fruit with the less healthy pieces. I just wonder if I constructed it myself, whether it had A, look that good, and B, be that healthy. I'm not quite so sure. So there's a real potential for there to be positive spin in regards to helping educate and create a healthy environment for our attendees as well in that. I'd like to stick with you, Jim, for a moment, because also related to any types of packaging, whether it's these or these compostable ones, which are, single service in the top right-hand corner, so one product in one box, versus the one just below that, which is multiple items in one box. Is there other supply challenges out there as we, gravitate much more towards these solutions now? Or have we got over that in 2020 and that our members don't need to be concerned about supply issues?
Where we are, we're stationed right along the eastern seaboard, right in the mid-Atlantic. And I will tell you that we are having supply chain issues. I think an issue is defined as, kind of a variable state. That being said, I can go a week or two and not have any issues at all. And then, another week or two and just not be able to get, compartmentalized, eco-friendly product. Right now, a lot of issues that I'm seeing are with like microwavable, the black bottom hinge containers, maybe compartmentalized. They're kind of hard to come by. It really, I can't speak for everybody else in other parts of the world, but I know because of the population density, we're sandwiched here between Washington, D.C. and New York, and we've got Boston to the north and Philly to the north. Things are tough. Things are tough right now. Now we're going to add weather to the whole scheme of things. We got 9 inches of snow last night, and a lot of stuff is shut down today. On top of supply chain issues, yeah, we're going to have some issues.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Well, not great for us as an industry, but certainly a big shout out there to the supply chain to really lock into the fact that we're going to need a lot more supply, but also innovation around this area as well for us to keep up. One last question on this before I move on and just show one more example. Louise, if I may, Louise, Executive Chef at Sigtuna Höjden in Sweden. In the top left is your refreshment break in a box, which you designed for delegates to pick the box up and walk outside of the building and have a mini picnic in the refreshment break times. My question to you, apart from the statement, which it looks great, looks very environmentally friendly, is will this encourage delegates in the future to step outside more than they would have in the past, despite the need or want to do it just because of the pandemic?
Yes, we do believe so. First of all, we can see that we have this option, is getting our guests to come to us or choose us, because we can show them that you can do this by choice for the whole group. And we can see an outdoor, people want to spend time outdoor. So this is a good way to get them to sit out as a full group and have their in-between break.
Perfect.
So yes, I think so.
Mark, could I just come in there? We do have a question from Michelle in the group where she appreciates the boxes look fabulous and lovely. What about sort of managing the waste and cost?
Well, thank you for that. I think that's a fairly obvious statement. Who would like to pick that up? How do you manage the waste in relation to this new style of service?
If we look at just the Sigtunahöjden box, it's not as much food in that one as it would be on the buffet per person. In the same time, you get to eat all of it. Yes, we can see that you waste a bit more food because maybe you don't like cream cheese or something like that. But cost-wise, because there's less food coming out, the actual box is paid for in the food costs.
So overall waste is down, but where there's waste may have differed a little bit.
But then you have the staff cost as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Louise. Anyone have a different view on that before we move forward? No? This example here, appreciation to Chateau Form, our member in Europe that showed this. One of the reasons why I'm showing this was it put a big smile on my face because again, it actually spoke more about the presentation and the quality of photography and marketing that's going into promoting this style of food than maybe what we're just seeing on the plate. Although it actually looks incredible as well and makes me really hungry looking at all of these images in that way. But it sent a very clear message to me now that if this is our new style of presenting food, then in terms of promoting our readiness and preparedness and our product offer and service style to our customers, we're going to need to invest in our photography and marketing around this. And really, there's some great images here. And pretty much, a lot of them are recyclable. I can see one plastic bottle that's in there, but if we look at a lot of everything else, you can see again that eco theme is flowing through that. So just wanted to share that from our friends at Chateau Form. Thank you for sharing. Kate, we're going to move into section 2 now, but just before I do, are there any other questions before we head out to food wrapping and presentation?
No questions in the chat box, Mark, at the moment, no.
Okay, wonderful. So here we're going to look at station locations, the approaches to service, and of course then those product outputs. And the first question that I've got of our panel is, we often hear how we must adapt, and of course this has been that year of adapt or change, adapt or die. But, my question is, how much do breaks need to change in the long term? Do we have a risk of moving too far in one direction, thinking that's the right thing to do? And, is there a difference of opinion out there, or is there something we should be mindful of? I'm going to take that question and directly ask Yakub about that, because I know that you've been getting some feedback from those groups that have already returned.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Well, of course, we do have to change, but it's a balance between restriction and the sensitivity and the craving for normality. So here we try to create, it depends on the menu, of course, and how it's designed. We try to create bubbles here and having guests only in one bubble, and using the same tablecloth, using the same glasses, using the same cutlery, using the same serving surroundings as we have done always, just to keep some kind of normality. We made some small mobile station with a small mobile kitchen, you can call it, with an oven, with a sink, with a toaster and a small fridge, to make us able to produce the food live. There's another thing. There's the balance between pre-made and pre-packed food and live-made food. And we definitely want to make the food alive. So just to try to adapt to the craving of some kind of normality in these crazy times.
Yakub, thank you for that. Does anyone else have any opinions on that? Because it's a pretty important point. If we change everything before our attendees come back, they're going to be pretty quick if we don't get it right to tell us that we've got it wrong and that we've got to dial backwards, and that in its own right can be wasteful and from an investment perspective can be costly. Anyone else got any views on the sensitivities and balance between our appetite to come back to what it used to be like versus the change? And if not, we can carry on through.
Hey, Mark, it's Murray. I agree with Yakub as well too. Creating bubbles where people can get from their meeting space to the break area, having it timed, having it sanitized between different groups hitting that space, but also giving the groups the option as well too of having maybe, instead of going to a communal coffee break, having their own private station, whether that be in their room or a separate area. They can go to that area. They know it's only for them. They're not going to be cross-utilizing or crossing paths with any other groups. And one of the approaches we're taking is actually kind of what the schools are taking, what both my daughters are in, is that they have their classroom, they have to stay in their cohort, they eat their lunch in their room, and then when they go outside to play in the yard, they have a specific area they have to play in. And that's their area. They can't go out of that area. There's extra, I think, lunchtime supervisors, there's extra teachers outside that are all looking at them and making sure that they're not interacting with other classes. And we would probably, if we take that whole model and kind of put that into hospitality, that would really fit what we would be doing. Is we would have another staff member there sanitizing the station, helping any questions. We would have signage. We would have a good, clean communication of where that area would be, where they could go, how many times they could go to that area. And if it was their own private station, then there would really probably reduce that anxiety level for different attendees coming to a meeting, because the anxiety level is going to be completely different all the way through the spectrum. So whatever we can do to give comfort, flexibility, high sanitation, and options is going to be key.
I think that's a really important. Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to jump on that because Mary, you raise a good point. You both do, Yakub, as well. And so when I was looking at that break station, you know, the concept of that as a highly congested, right, normal traffic flow kind of would make you a little nervous, I think. But the spin that they both put on that is, this is a private environment. And I think that makes all the difference. If this is more private, or if we end up to move some of the break stations in the room. I think for the longest time, you know, we worked hard to establish the concept that taking a break from being inside the room and socializing and all that, there was a high upside to that. I'll bet you now, to Murray's idea about this spirit of keeping things private and contact tracing and just public health, there's an opportunity to establish a real partnership with these groups early in the day. And perhaps that break station is inside the room for all the reasons everybody mentioned. But before, we might have shied away from that. But now, if you schedule breaks and you schedule times for people to come and go, maybe there's more receptive. So you've got a lot of options. The portable that Yakub and the private that Murray was talking about and in room, I think, is in play now if you do it correctly.
Sean, you've been in the industry just about as long as I have. So did you ever imagine that you would speak about the in-room refreshment break stations, where we've spent most of our careers talking about the opposite? I mean, it's a little bit like saying a la carte pricing is better than CMP pricing, right? But I make that point lightheartedly, but also, you know, this is how radical the change is and how far we've got to stretch ourselves in terms of that thought. Will we have, as a consequence of this long term, will we need to have our architects and our designers design more individual, private per group stations, either in the room or outside of the room? Or will we need more stations communally, just with lower footfall? Or will we bounce back to entirely the same? I don't know that we have the answer. You're all offering different views and thoughts on that. And maybe it's a combination of overall, there's going to be more of a mix. Instead of one approach, there's going to be multiple approaches, which naturally will reduce footfall in that area. There's two examples here that I would like Yakub to talk about. But first of all, Yakub, tell us how to name your property without the risk of getting it really wrong.
It's called Bouterhøj.
Bouterhøj.
Yes, we use the special letter in the end. Let's call it Bouterhøj. Yes.
So Bouterhøj is in Denmark, of course, just for those.
Yes, in Denmark. Yes, sorry, we are in Denmark. Yeah, we are in northern Zealand in Denmark.
So tell us the two stories, Yakub, that you've got here. One is the in-room dining, in-room refreshment break, and the other is your mobile bakery station, service station. We'd love to hear about these two stories.
The picture on the left is the mobile kitchen, and it started out as a small kitchen in a cafe, and we actually just put wheels on it. Got a big serving desk as well, with a fridge underneath it, and we just put it on wheels as well, and try to just drive around in a kitchen, serving breaks. And we really like to make live food in order to make sure that there's a person there. We try to keep the same staff in the same areas all day. So when you're here as a participant of a venue, you'll see the same chef for lunch and for the afternoon breaks and for dinner as well, and the same waiter. On the right, it's a serving station we made inside one of our large meeting rooms. It's actually made out of an old trolley, so here's sustainability in a way as well. And just trying to create a private environment in the meeting room.
So out of these two concepts that you have, is there any noticeable impact on labor and food costs or beverage costs compared to a communal station? Anything you share with this group? Because we're all operators on this call, so it'd be great to hear.
Well, of course, this is a staff. We're using more staff, of course, but aren't we all in these special times? All work just demands more effort to it. So far, this was just an option in trying to make things work and in getting things done. I don't know all the time how this will in what way we'll use this forward. I don't know with the mobile station. That will probably still live in the time to come, and we might actually try to make some of our other meeting rooms, the big ones, trying to create the private environment in making small serving stations inside the room.
For the rest of the panel, Yakub's point that he made about the personal chef, it reminded me when you talked about that. First of all, I thought of like personal butler service, and I thought about this, the French ski chalet of having your own, your own, dedicated team that support you. It's an interesting concept, and one that's linked to maybe the refreshment break and even the lunch experience being a higher quality one than in the past, and linked to that could be a higher cost point, a higher value point for our customers as well, with that more personalized service. But how do others feel about it? Do you feel that's an approach that you're either using or could use in the future, or would be cautious against it? Okay.
Mark, I love it. This is fantastic, and I think this is a great example in my. So you talk about a couple of things. Cost now has come up a second time, and I'll talk about that in a second. But one of the things you always see in a very challenging situation, a crisis, if you will, is creativity and innovation like this moved forward 5, 6, 7 years as a response to what we're facing today. So I think this is an outstanding solution, and you could certainly, imagine this as being an element that's going to enhance any meeting, just like food always has. And then the second thing you talked about was cost, and again, that keeps recurring here. And to that, I would say it's easy to start the conversation there, right? Oh, this is just going to cost too much money. I think it's fair to say we have managed that side of the equation our entire career. And so whatever that cost element is, if it's temporary, if it's permanent, if it's different, we in partnership with planners, and I'm not on a soapbox, I'm not trying to make a pitch, it's the reality. We have worked through it together. And that's going to be the case here. We're going to end up in a better place, greater innovation, and we'll sort the costs out in partnership with event hosts and meeting planners.
Or in terms of that allocation mix on a CMP program, how much needs to go to room, how much needs to go to lunch versus refreshment breaks? Or this could be even an upsell. You have service style 1 as your core CMP, but if you upgrade, you actually have that personal service at your breaks and your lunch, just has a different price point. Really, really interesting. One last point I'd like to make as well, Yakub, you mentioned it in our pre-work, which is the involvement of stations. We haven't got any images, but the involvement of stations outside for refreshment breaks and lunches. So again, you're increasing the footprint of the property in terms of stations and approaches for people to go to throughout the day.
Yes, of course, but it depends on the venue. But we are so fortunate that we have a lot of nature around us. We have a small vineyard, we have Hope Garden, we have a beach, we have a beach house. And those are really facilities that we are using at the moment and will use in the time to come when the weather gets better.
Great, thank you for sharing. Kate, we're going to move into section 3, which is looking at information sharing and how technology may or may not be able to support that. This is where we get really blue sky thinking, but any questions as we wrap up on the station locations?
Yeah, I've got a question coming from Stephen regarding the mobile kitchen, probably one for Yakub, but how do you manage supplying the necessary power and electricity?
Well, the station needs power and it needs water supply. And of course, we had to install water supply a few places, but that's all it needs. All the wastewater goes into a bin. So just power and some water.
Great. And Kate, was there another question?
There is a question, but it goes back to the boxes. Do you want to pick that up now or at the end?
Absolutely. No, we're happy to address all questions. We're doing great with time.
Great. So yeah, it's from Anna in Denmark, probably going back to Louise possibly in terms of the boxes and how you deal with food allergies. If someone hasn't advised you in advance that they have any allergies, are the boxes sort of pre-prepared? How do you handle that scenario?
Okay, Louise, we'll ask you to come off mute.
Sorry, was that allergy? If they come up with it during the actual break?
So if you have somebody arrives at the venue and hasn't advised you of food allergies, are the boxes pre-prepared? How do you handle someone with a food allergy?
We put what allergy it's on in the box? Or do you mean, otherwise we just make another box in the kitchen because we are not that far away from the boxes. I mean,
so they can be personalized, Louise, for
yeah,
those that have pre-identified allergens. Yes. I'll take it just one step further because I know in our buffets we've moved and we include a standard in the main allergies and providing that within the variety. Is everything when you're boxing a special request if it's not allergen free, or do you have some a standard?
We have a standard box.
Okay.
That goes for everyone, and then they have said before what kind of allergy it is. So we got a list, maybe 2 gluten, 1 lactose, 1 vegan, and then we just sign it on the boxes, put them in a different area, so the ones can go there. In the same time, we do serve these types on plates on the table, ready set, so you can just walk into your spot and sit on your chair. And then we have, it's kind of a buffet, but with plastic over it. And then it says which allergy it is on those plates. So those people come and just take their own plate pre-order. Otherwise, we're going to have to go into the kitchen and make one if you haven't pre-ordered it. Is that summing it up? Did I understand the question right?
It is.
Yeah.
I believe so, but our attendees will ask another question if they'd like to go a little bit deeper into that. What I'd like to move into now then is that information sharing, getting that information. The more we talk about the personalization, whether it's pre-boxing of break settings or matching the attendee with their desired product, sitting them down in a designated area, all of those things lead to personalization. And as ever you think about personalization and a delicate experience, it's about finding out in advance what they're likely to want. And that's a careful balance. Now, I know if you go to a football match these days, you have gone from finishing at half time and running to get your cup of coffee and your sandwich to now ordering it on your app and it being there, and the improvement in both pre-ordering and thinking about that and selecting what you want, having it been there, the better flow of individuals, the better staff utilization, all of that we've seen happen in stadiums that carry 50 or 100,000 people. So it wasn't such a crazy question when this, our expert panel started thinking about this, our task force in advance, about, okay, what would be nice to find out in advance, and how could we find that out in advance, and how could that help us, you know, provide and match the right product with the attendees. So I'd like to just open that up, that whole concept of, in general, how could we obtain the information beforehand? What ways could we do that? And how would it help you from an operational perspective to know in advance, within reason, what people would like? Open it up to whoever would like to talk about that, or any aspect of linking personalization with finding the right food, the right service for the right attendee.
I'd be interested, Mark, to hear certainly what everybody has on their mind on this. But just to make sure I have the setting right, by the way, when you mentioned that football match, that's football with a U, right? Is it? Yeah, just for all of us. So, you know, I'll offer up a couple of thoughts here just to kind of get started. So, as I mentioned before, we manage venues of all shapes and sizes, in stadiums and indoor and outdoor and large, all the way to smaller arenas and small boutique cultural destinations and everything in between. What I can assure you is everybody is working in that space exactly as you described, and there's a lot of cross-sharing of ideas. So whether it's food ordering through an app that's actually delivered to your seat to avoid having to get up and all of that foot traffic, as you mentioned, or I saw a product just this week. Murray, maybe you told me about this. I think maybe you've seen it too, but there was a coffee product that when you get in proximity to the coffee maker, it just automatically pops up on your app and asks you what you want. You order this. There's no human interaction. The machine is programmed to respond to how you input your preferences, and you simply pick up your drink and walk away. So as you talk about ways to inform what your food order is, there's an awful lot of that activity, already going on, and a lot of cross sharing.
Yes, Sean, it was a coffee we were referring to. One of the things that we were looking at, and I'm still going to do a little bit more investigation on it, is something called iBeacon, which you just works with the Bluetooth of your phone, and it gives you the opportunity to do, from my understanding, of course, is that within your certain proximity, say a food station, if you're doing food station or grab and go, or a box lunch pickup, the app you can set so the app will actually pick up what is in the box lunch, give you all the allergy stuff, give you everything, all the information, all the ingredients. So if you're standing in line, if you envision we're standing in line 10 people 6 feet apart from each other, that line is going to get pretty big, even if you're just doing a quick pickup for something, say like a box lunch or a bento box, something like that. But if you're at the back of the line, you want to know what's in the box, you can look at this iBeacon and it would actually give you all the information. The same sort of technology would work with some of the coffee machines. It's the same thing. You get close to the coffee machine, your phone automatically picks up the coffee machine through this app and then you can order your coffee right there, and all you're doing is really taking a cup and putting it under the dispenser, and it should automatically dispense. So it's out there. It's just a little bit more, just got to try and hunt down a little bit more of the right applications that's going to be used. And it's probably going to be different for every venue as well too. So venue specific, what application works best for you is going to be something you're going to have to look at from a property level.
Well, I was fascinated when you started having that conversation about iBeacon, and for those that are not familiar with it, whilst it's not new as a concept and it uses Bluetooth technologies, one of the first things you have to do is give permission for iBeacon to work with your phone, either through an app or some other way. But you're right, Murray, when you make the point about getting that information to people before they're at that point of needing to pick that food up, means that they can do their decision making and make their choices while they're in the queue, as opposed to then holding up the flow, because we've all seen people at the buffet station where you know they just can't make their mind up, and therefore it holds everybody up. But it doesn't need to be technology as well, just even larger labeling. So where we've got very small food explanations or allergy information on a station at the moment, if you can see that from further back in the queue, or if you've got your conference app and you can see what selection is going to be there at the break or at the lunch or at the afternoon session, you can make your choices beforehand. So where we talk about information flow to attendees, yes, technology could be a great way of doing it. Visuals, screens, through a delegate's app if you've got one of those for the property, but it could also be just straightforward, bigger wording, more visuals in around those areas to help people make the choice before they need to.
Yes, absolutely.
Sean, you even made a point as well to me previously about that time. You know, you could be as simple as getting people's choices for lunch as part of their service in the morning, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, because I could imagine as an attendee, you hear this, and again, I don't want that to be the theme of this discussion, but at some point, what's the cost is again going to cross your mind. And so I think that's a chance to just continue to get more creative. And an example, I saw a breakfast board. Now this was in a very different application, but applied some creativity and a program that we're starting to roll out. It was a breakfast board that you would see in a restaurant, and maybe it was a continental if you want to get the visual that somebody might kind of drop on the table, and it was beautiful in and of itself. Imagine that in that particular application, it was built for a couple of people, and you sit it down as a central thing at a breakfast table. Imagine if you distill that down to a single portion serving, and we talk about the power of food. You've got an opportunity if that was an individual's portion for a meeting, and you set that up at their personal table, right? So you've got a meeting for say 25 people, and you condense that break station, if you will, that break platter to a single serving, put that at their place setting with a very warm, personalized welcome letter. Right. And in that letter, you're talking about lunch. You're talking about, you know, inviting them to a wonderful day. What time is their break going to be? What time will you come in to take their lunch order? Just rattling off a few things here. Maybe the restroom location, and even a safe respite area if there's a fire drill. So someone wordsmith that into a wonderful welcome letter. What you've done is you've used food to now drive safe behavior. What I'm telling you, this is the invisible hand. And what I'm telling you is I need you to come in the room and sit down. I need you not to mingle around in large groups. I need you to know where and what time we're going to do everything. What you don't know is behind that, I've also given the same letter to the other 3 groups that are here, and I've timed them different than yours. And so as the operator, you're really controlling that entire environment. You've established contact tracing. You've got traffic patterns. You know when people are going to be flowing through the building. So you know when to schedule on the backside of that your cleaning team, so that you can not only take care of your customers, but you're going to keep your employees safe as well. And all of that because you just looked differently at that welcome amenity or that small continental breakfast for a guest arriving to your venue.
Sean has just done a great job of selling all of the different benefits of getting that information in advance, but it would be remiss of me not to ask our 3 chefs that we've got on the panel today, or any of our chefs that are part of the audience here. how much advance notice do you need for that to make a difference in terms of your preparation, your boxing, and getting the right number out for that group when it breaks? 30 minutes, hour, 2 hours? Louise is smiling but not commenting, so she's just thinking about whether she's going to commit to something now.
We normally want all this information like 5 days beforehand.
As much time.
Normal. But yeah, of course we change it if it's an hour before, but then we have the basic already covered, and maybe you just have like 5-10% that comes in and changes it. So that was why I was laughing. I was like, 5 days, 1 hour, it's a bit different. But
1 hour is better than nothing. 5 days is optimal.
Yes,
but
definitely.
It just shows how our thinking is changing and what has become attractive now that wasn't in the past. But interesting. Jim, were you about to speak?
I was just going to say, you know, and certainly to echo what Louise said, the flexibility element of a special, you know, especially special dietary requests, I think that just has to be part of our DNA at this point. There are so many specialty dietary requests, whether it be vegan, vegetarian, GF, if it's an allergy awareness thing, having that flexibility and being ready to go with those modifications, it can't be even a hiccup in a day. It has to be something that's just part of our vernacular, or we're really going to be in trouble. You know, that has been coming on for a long time. There's been a lot of resistance kind of from the chef community of, hey, you know, this is our food, don't change the way that we're doing things. That's kind of old school thinking. The contemporary approach is, you know, whatever you need, however we can do it, we're going to make it happen. And I think that is just got to be not only part of how we conduct business, but it's an upsell. It's a convenience for guests that are looking for that modification without a hassle. You know, just being ready to go with it, and you're stocking, you know, vegan items and GF items as just part of the day-to-day. Really, really important.
All thank you. We're going to move into our next area, which is to ask the question of our group about long-term and short-term hygiene and sanitation measures. Kate, just before we do, any questions from the last section?
No, just a note from Felix, actually, just echoing there what James was saying, but prior planning prevents poor performance, and you know, you just need to anticipate what's ahead.
Perfect, thank you. So I have a simple question for this group now, which is, you know, what do you feel the impact will be long term? So let's forget 2021, we're going into 2022, as it relates to hygiene considerations around the break station environments. You can share with me your crystal ball thinking around what may or may not change. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pick on one point specifically. And Louise, you have gone through the service in Sweden of your events pretty much throughout. You haven't closed, and you've been looking after meetings. You were put in a position where you moved from the self-service model to serving tea and coffee to your attendees en masse. Tell us a little bit about that and what you learned from that, and also how you felt from a service perspective.
Well, the actual point that you mean right now is when we had made our boxes and they were going to have coffee with it, and there was a group of 50 people, and we had all these 50 people coming up to us to get the coffee, which we were supposed to pour for them just to get them going quicker. And we realized quite quickly that this is not working. First of all, we get them too close to us and they want to stand talking, they want to ask questions. It's better that we have multiply stations for them to go to. So different areas of the room goes quicker, it's no queues. And then we can be standing there, and if someone wants to ask us something, then they can come up and have a distance to us and ask. But I was a bit uncomfortable at that first time when they actually just came too close to you. But we had in October, we had a quite okay time for this time being. It's easy easier to have them sitting down, and we were using the conference rooms as well, so we could have them in, not in the same room that they were having their conference, but in another room, but still not in the actual dining hall, which meant that they had their own space, and everything was served on the table for them, which was really good. It was easy work.
And again, I just take from that the need to find really strong long-term solutions as opposed to the short-term ones are really important, because those feeling uncomfortable is not where anybody wants to be. We don't want to be putting our teams through that. We're going to move on now to drink service, which was a fascinating area for us, because we think refreshment break stations are in equal measure and equal importance, the drink and the snack service area. But we asked both our experts here and then you, our members, if drink and food service points should be separated in the future. And the results that came in were that our expert panel said yes, you'd like drink separation. Our members said yes, but maybe slightly less when we look in terms of the percentages, our member views. But also when we look at it, investing in contactless drinks was really important from or drink service. And Murray, you talked about the one approach to doing that using iBeacon, but even just a single touch point that is sanitized very easily. And then, from a task force view, separating food and drink service, clearly separating the two was loud and clear. You wanted to see that. So, panel, talk to us about why you feel that's such an important action to take in the future.
Separating the beverage service from the food, I think, is going to be one of the key things, just to more or less break up the group. Really so if you're looking for a coffee, you're looking for a cold beverage, even breaking those up. So the coffee machine is going to be a specific person is going to want coffee that time. Someone else might want a soft drink, some juice. So even looking at stuff we're even looking at too is how do we actually make sure that we're offering a cold beverage served in its original container, whether that be pop or the juice, a bottle of water, and still trying to keep it cold, right? So you don't want to have people opening that door or the fridge all the time, trying to continuously touching that fridge. So we're investigating with different sort of open top freezers that we could look at, or open top refrigerators that is just more as dump your hand in, grab what you need, and then move on. But as much separation as possible will help with the social distancing, but also give, I think, again, that comfort level when it comes just to getting a beverage. Or we're looking even trying to maybe have the option of, if someone is not comfortable going to those communal areas or communal stations, having a staff member just provide that to them as well.
Great, thank you for that, Murray. What I'd also like to pick up on very quickly is then again, just from a food and beverage expert perspective, that whole approach of creating break stations within meeting rooms was second only to separating food from drink service. So again, there's an appetite there to be able to develop that concept further and invest in in-room setups that create the variety that we talked about being most fearful of losing. Thank you all. We are coming up to the hour now. I'd like to take the opportunity just before we close today's session to ask Kate if we have any other questions or indeed any other points that our panel would like to make that we haven't covered today. Kate, over to you.
Yeah, we have no more questions, Mark, in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. Panel, you've been awesome, as you always are, both in the work that took place before today's webinar and those thoughts, many more thoughts that we didn't have a chance to talk about, but we'll go into the white paper. Any other closing thoughts from our panel today before we wrap up? Well, huge appreciation to you all. It only takes me now, the last part of this session is to wish all of you an incredible, wonderful, restful, festive holidays with your family and loved ones, however that is going to take place. Thank you for being a part of all of IACC's webinar and online program in 2020. We're going to come back in 2021 with even more verve and vigor. And of course, we will keep connecting you, our members, our opinions, our thoughts, and our creativity. And register today for the January session, which will be Reimagining the conference lunch session. Thank you all. Take care and happy holidays.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.